So food quality is huge. I mean, I would say the biggest thing that I tell my clients is like, okay, if we're looking at your foods, we want to make sure that at least 80% of your day is made up of foods that either had a face at some point or grew from the earth at some point. So had a face at some point is going to be an animal, meat, seafood, or obviously something that comes from an animal. So if you're having eggs from a chicken, or maybe I would consider, good quality yogurts and cottage cheese. Those are forms of dairy that come from animals, obviously. So had a face at some point or grew from the earth at some point would be your vegetables, your potatoes, things like that. And then that would be what I would say, okay, let's start there. Let's make sure that at least 80s, and it depends on where the person's coming from, right? If they're coming from a highly processed diet, then maybe you're like, all right, let's work on 60% of your day looking like this, and let's work up to that 80%. And then kind of, telling them like, hey, if 20% of the rest of your diet is maybe some other processed foods, but that works within your lifestyle and you're still getting all the things that you need from those whole foods, then that works, right? And so that's one of the biggest things that is just kind of for myself, kind of diving into their food logs, looking where they're at, and then seeing how we can tweak things without completely overhauling everything at once, because usually that's just a recipe for disaster. If you're like, hey, you're eating this way, let's completely change things. And that's really also like within the 21-day challenge and things like that. I'm also trying to explain that through like, hey, if you're coming from this standard American diet, super, super high carb, like we can start to transition things gradually. And so just really kind of looking at the individual and seeing where they're coming from, and then, working from there. Like I have a lot of women coming to me, they want to change their body composition, but they're so just stuck in this restrictive mindset, this restrictive cycle, whether it's, cutting out carbs, cutting calories, like being in a deficit, years on end. But I think the biggest thing with women, and especially like they want to get arms that look toned or whatever it may be, it's like you have to lift weights to do that. You have to, put yourself in a place where your body is going to repair and rebuild, and that means eating enough food and going through that cycle versus thinking that, you can just continue to restrict and you'll get those toned arms if you lose the body fat. But if you don't have any muscle under that body fat, you're not going to look the way you want to look. And that's one of the biggest, pieces that I try to, hammer into my clients' heads, because I went through that myself. Like you have to spend time, building muscle and spend time at maintenance calories or in a slight surplus, and not be afraid to maybe see that scale go up for a little while, because that is the necessary part of putting on muscle, right? It doesn't just pop out of nowhere.